And joining me on the call today, I'm super excited about having Carmen Williams and Andy Prosser. Welcome to the call, guys.
Awesome to be here.
Yeah, great. Likewise.
Super interesting topic today, the new rules of employment. And I suppose the theme of this conversation is around hours versus outcomes. And I think we've all seen this, as the economy goes through this tough growth spurt that we're going through in terms of increased interest rates, pressure on businesses to actually recruit more effectively. It's making people think differently about how they build their teams and how they keep their teams. And I know, like Carmen, for you, you're sort of been working in this space of helping people grow their teams, and Andy's really in the tech space. And I just wanted to get your view on the new rules of employment and what you think is important for business owners right now. Maybe Carmen, start with you.
Yeah, I think the balance of power has shifted a little bit. I went for a run yesterday with this guy, and he's got a 20-odd-year-old daughter, and he's like, my daughter thinks that the employer is like lucky to have her, and in my day it was always about that we were lucky to have the job. And I'm like, yeah, but that's because things have shifted. So your team have got options, and they're looking around at what their options are. And so as business owners, I think it's really important to look at what value that you're providing to your team and how to make them want to stay with you.
Yeah, because I suppose in the end, the world is a bit more transparent now, and the employee can look around and they can look at things like Glassdoor and check out, who are the good employers. It's almost a buyer's market for them. So really, how does a business owner become more attractive other than pay packet? Because that seems to be the obvious one, but I don't think it's the primary reason people work at different places.
Yeah, look, let's not pretend that pay is not important, but I think there's more than that. So I had a business owner come to me the other day. She's got 5 Australian staff,
Right.
and she said, Carmen, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my staff. Our business has grown, one staff member has left, and we're just not providing that customer service that we pride ourselves on. My staff are feeling stressed because they're not able to live up to where they want to be, and they're taking work home with them. So what she asked us to help her with was to actually get her a virtual assistant to take the administration off her current staff based in Australia, so they can focus on that customer service and enjoy their jobs more, provide better service to her clients, but not do that admin stuff that could be taken care of by a virtual assistant.
And this is an interesting play on this idea of getting virtual assistants, because often people think they're a replacement for employees.
Yeah, and I think that's not the way to look at it. I think if you've got an Australian staff member, you should have a virtual assistant to help your staff member and to help you, because the more effective your team can be and you can be, the more revenue your business can make.
Yeah, and I suppose one good thing that came out of the whole lockdown COVID experience was this going out, like being able to remotely employ people.
Yes.
Working from home was a byproduct, but in the end, what it's done is it's opened up the world so we can have collaborative teams. And I think this is where you're going to step in, Andy. And really, it's not about you do this job, you do that job. We all work together, and now we can use technology to actually integrate our workload.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things there, just to sort of go on that point, is that the technology to work remotely has been there for a long time.
Yeah.
What COVID did was created the perfect storm, if you like, to actually turn it all on and make people realize that it was available to everyone. Prior to COVID, I'd have lots of conversations about people working remotely, and many organizations, large and small, were very reluctant to embrace that sort of concept. If I can't see the bum on seat, the person, the body, etc., in my office, they're not working, was the general manager's view, if you like, of things. So shifting and COVID forcing that change made people realize that in some cases those employees that we had in the office are now more productive being at home.
Mm-hmm.
And those same employees are going, well, if I can work remotely, then why should I live in the heart of Sydney or Melbourne, where I'm priced out in many cases? I can go and live somewhere else that may be either more appropriate for my budget in terms of purchasing a home, but also better for my family.
Yeah.
I know my personal experience, that's what we did. We moved just prior to COVID hitting, actually, to a coastal community and love the area. But we're a couple of hours from Sydney.
So you're sort of touching on this idea of, the workplace is more flexible. There's no two ways about it. Some people work better from home. Some people work better in the office. But the pressure on the business owner right now is inflation's kicking in. Everybody who is employed is looking for ways to increase their wage. Now, if you think about how a business owner goes about increasing wages, there's only a couple of ways they can do it. The worst way is literally just pay more for the same people to do the same thing, right? And that's a recipe for disaster because it's unsustainable. The best way is to negotiate productivity. So instead of paying for hours, we're now paying for outcomes. And so I suppose the question is, how can we afford to do that? Like, what does a business owner have to really do to make sure that I can get more value out of my employees?
So I've got Australian a team member. She's based in Queensland, and she is our account manager. And I've said to her, anything that involves administration that someone else could do, I want you to ask our virtual assistant team to do it. So, for example, if she identifies that a client's happy and we're going to send them a Google review, she asks the team to do it in Slack. If she, wants to do anything that is like a little bit fiddly, updating the CRM or sending something out or updating a database, then the team do that for her. And so she understands that not only is that to help her, but it's also my expectation of her so that she can then spend more time talking to the clients and supporting them with their virtual assistants.
Yeah, interesting. So really just working out what the best use of that person's time is and saying anything that's not that, hand over to someone who's on a lower pay grade than you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a very similar conversation that I've heard about things like ChatGPT, where people are threatened by it, some people, and other people just see it as an augmentation, and they say, really just makes you work faster. You still have to work, right? You still have to ask it questions, and you still have to filter the answers and ask more questions. But you used to spend all of that time doing the research yourself and collating the data. And so the smart person grabs it and says, this makes me more productive and I can do my job faster. Now, as a business owner, that's music to my ears because I'm looking for productivity. I'm looking for profitability in the business. And if we can do it better by embracing the sort of the co-working spaces, not the co-working spaces, but the collaboration online, that's where the smart money is. I mean, you see a lot of this, Andy, because you're in that tech space. So
yeah, look, I see a lot around just general productivity. We fall into the trap of we've worked out how the tools that we use work, and we just continue to do that. And because we continue to do that, I mean, yes, ChatGPT and all those sorts of tools is a great example of something that's come out from outside that's forcing change. For many organizations, whether you're using Google or the Microsoft suite or whatever other suite you're using, you've got your way of working, the tools that you use, your emails, your files, and all that sort of stuff. And this concept of time and productivity and performance and all that sort of stuff, outcomes over time spent.
Yeah.
You know, if you can find ways of shortcutting how to do something, whether it's that shortcut is to get an offshore resource to do that, or whether that shortcut is to reduce 2 or 3 steps out of your daily process, right? By that reduction, what you're doing is you're buying some time back. And if you do this in a team, especially teams of 10 or more, then what you find is that you can save, maybe 30 minutes a day per person in your organization. What that can do is it can quickly translate into not having to go and hire that next person, not yet anyway. And by doing so, you're giving yourself a little bit more room in terms of productivity. You're allowing to maybe give your team members that little extra in their pay packets each month, right? So, and about to stretch that dollar further, or maybe put, generate more profits within the business, so therefore you can invest more within the organization itself.
Gotcha.
Right. So it's about having a look at what you do and finding opportunities of, the biggest thing is just shaving off the time. And then the last thing is really have a look at what each team member is doing and understand what value they're putting back into the company. If they're spending a lot of time doing something, is that because the systems are bad? The processes are bad? Is there a way that you can help them be more effective with that time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's technology solutions, but there's also people augmentation solutions.
Well, there is. And when Carmen was talking before, a friend of mine, he tried using VAs for sales, and he ended up flipping and saying, I can't use them to sell, but what I can use them to do is sit on the call with the sales guy and pick up the baton and run with it when the sales guy hangs up. So literally the sales guy does nothing except for have the conversation and hang up the phone. And the VA takes all of the action items out of that conversation and does all the follow-up. And that's just a simple augmentation where all of a sudden now the sales guy just does the best thing he does, the best thing he can do, which is talking to people. And everything that's not that has been now handed over almost automatically. So he doesn't even have to tell them what to do. They just listen to the call. It's actually recorded and away they go. But this is the level of technology that we have now where you can have, your calls recorded. You can have someone who's listening in and actioning items on the fly. I mean, there are automations to do it, but even without automations, you can do it with a VA for a fraction of the cost of having to do it yourself, basically. So let me ask you, if we're going to summarize this new rules of employment, what do you think are the top 2 or 3 key things that people should be looking at right now to take advantage of the way the market is and become a more attractive employer? Carmen, let's hear from you first. What do you think?
I think we need to recognise the power has changed. So in the past, the employer had probably more power than the employee. And I think the employees have got more power now. And so, and that's probably a good thing. And as an employer, what you need to do is go, okay, what do they want? Do they want to work from home? Do they want to spend less time doing admin? What do they want in their role? And are you able to give it to them? And so I think it's just looking at it from their perspective.
Yeah, I always think it's a dance, right? Because I don't think either person has more power. It's the person who is more attractive. So at the moment, the employee is more attractive because they need them and there's less of them available. Yeah. But if the employer creates a very attractive business model and still can pay the premium, because you can't ignore wages, as you said, but it's not the priority. Wages are expected. Where people spend their days is a big part of this influence. So really thinking about how do we now get this employee who's almost the premium at the moment and become attractive to them. And I think what you touched on with taking away a lot of their sort of operational kind work and just really using them for what their strengths are.
Yeah.
What do you think, Andy? What are your top tips?
I think the biggest thing is to have a look at what you're asking your team to do, right? What opportunities are there to break your job descriptions into multiple parts? What parts of those job descriptions can be outsourced? What can be automated? All of those sorts of things. Is to rethink and rephrase what it is you're trying to get your team to deliver, right? You're trying to get your team to deliver, X, Y, and Z, or a bunch of widgets, or sell something. So the rules that you went into over the last few years in terms of how you structured those roles, that's changed. That's really what we're talking about here. That's changed. So we need to break those apart into the outcomes, focus on the outcomes each one of those components needs. And it might be multiple people. You need to redistribute that workload to different parts of your organization. And the last thing is that, and this is again, sort of the same sort of theme, that we don't often go back and saying how we're doing things. We don't ask, is there a more effective way of delivering that same outcome? Both as individuals as well as an employer. So, if you had a look at your processes and you agonized over creating all those systems and processes in terms of setting up your business, but go back and test them. Are they still valid in the new world?
Yeah,
Do we change them?
Yeah. I heard this, and I'm not sure if it was from you or from someone else, but they said business systems is not a strategy, it's a philosophy. Because I don't think you ever finish building them, right? The whole idea is that you create them, you use them, and as long as they're effective, you keep them. And as soon as they start dating, we need to go back to the drawing board. And I think my favorite quote was Jeff Bezos, who, at the bottom line of his first shareholders letter, and he refers to it in every shareholders letter since, it says, at Amazon, it's always day one. And what he's referring to is he wants all of his employees and all of his shareholders to think, as if I was starting again today, what would I do differently? Yeah. And that level of innovation is what's made Amazon, one of the biggest companies on the planet. And I think as a small organization, if we don't ask, how can we do it better? If I was starting again, what would I do differently? almost on a daily or weekly basis, we can't innovate quick enough to keep up with the changes in the market. And I think that the ones who can are the ones that are going to be the most attractive to these employees. And really, it's not about how do I afford to pay someone, it's about how do we innovate the role so that we can get more from them, right? As opposed
without burning them out.
Yeah, without burning them out. Well, burnout's not an attractive thing, right?
No.
So I suppose the theme of today is pretty simple. The new rules of employment are you've got to be smarter as an employer, I should say. You've got to combat the marketplace, which is really, there's an oversupply of jobs and an undersupply of high quality resources. And one of the smartest ways to do that is to recalibrate how we employ people. And using technology and using outsourcing as two great examples of how do we slice and dice these jobs so that we can get more out of our high value individuals by shuffling some of the tasks around. So look, I think there's a bit in this, and I'm super excited about this topic because I think people do need the challenge to think about how can I do it better. And if all we've done today is just give them a couple of ideas as to, how can we open up these doors, and, obviously getting in touch with someone who can guide you on this journey, we'll get some innovation out there in the marketplace and hopefully some exciting times. We're nodding. Guys.
Well said,
No,
David.
that was a brilliant summary. I loved it. It was just spot on. It brought it all together. Nice.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Because it's not as complex as we think. It's just hard, right? Because it requires change and no one likes it, right? We'd love things to go back to how they were, but they just don't. And you sit there going, well, I can wish for things to be easier. I can wish for life, like I can wish I was better. And in this scenario, I think the business owner needs to step up, or they're going to lose their good employees to someone who does. And this is the innovation cycle. So guys, look, really mindful of time. Thanks so much for actually contributing. And I'm super excited. We've got an event coming up called the New Rules of Employment, where we're going to be doing the deep dive into how we use tech to fast track growth, and also how we can integrate offshore, onshore, and actually create high yield. So we're working on outcomes instead of hours. So super excited about that event. And thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.